bring in Armen Georgian. Armen, just to step back a second as we wait for this result to come through. There's two candidates here. One globally an icon, as I mentioned before, of the populist right. We saw J.D. Vance explicitly giving him support, Armen, saying that this is a moment for Europe to choose the right candidate in Viktor Orban. He's ruled cumulatively for 20 years. It's 98 to 2002, then 2010 to, well, up until this moment. And yet the person he's up against, for those trying to understand why the candidate has had such success, this is Peter Magyar, former insider, worked in the office of Viktor Orban many moons ago, became the leader of this new party, TISA party, only 2 years ago. Explain to us the different visions the candidates have.
Yeah, well, this campaign, of course, very much billed as a choice between either Hungary staying within the European project and the Western Alliance or moving further to the east. And I'm joined with a guest who's very well placed to talk about that choice, Europe or somewhere further east, Katalin Cseh, who is actually a former member of the European Parliament. She was with the Renew bloc, which is a centrist bloc in the European Parliament. She's now an independent MP here in the Hungarian Parliament, which you can see, Gavin, nicely lit up behind us. Katalin, thanks for being on the program.
Thanks for having me.
So what's your reading of the situation first, a little bit, because we don't have actual partial results yet, we just have the turnout basically, don't we?
Yes, but even the turnout tells an amazing story that almost 80% of the country chose to go to vote for Hungary's future. And I'm wholeheartedly hoping for this future to be more pro-European, more happy and more free than the last 16 years we had behind us.
What sort of mood did you think there was among the voters when you were going around in your constituency and so on? What was the kind of feeling?
I think that there is an overwhelming feeling of hope that finally we can achieve change in this country, that a country where we are just as free and have just as many rights as any other European citizen is a reality, that can be a reality, that we can achieve the country we are dreaming of. And I honestly haven't felt this sentiment in this country for so many years. It is absolutely promising, so I'm very much looking forward for the results.
Yeah, and which could take a few hours,
yes,
as we were saying. And actually, we heard from the campaign director of Prime Minister Orban. He's saying, I guess he's managing expectations like everybody, but he's been saying we're still confident of having a majority in the next parliament. It's worth pointing out that because of the very complicated electoral system, we don't know how many seats each party is actually going to have. We don't know if TISA has definitely won or not. We don't know what sort of majority they could have. So I guess we still have to be very, very cautious for a few hours, do you think?
Well, obviously we have to be cautious. However, I could also say that no matter what the election system is, no matter how free or how fair the elections are, the majority of Hungarians are feeling that we deserve more as a nation. We deserve a country where pensioners can buy fruits or vegetables at the end of the day, where hospitals can treat people up to European standards, or where schools can give our kids a bright future. These were not possible under Viktor Orban's government. They governed terribly. And Hungarians, I think, in the majority, no matter how they vote or where they vote, they want a better future for themselves and their kids.
You mentioned freedom and fairness, or you alluded to that. There's, of course, been huge comment around this election because of things like deep fakes online that were targeting certain politicians or candidates. Also because of the very much commented visit by J.D. Vance, the American vice president, who even said, we have to get this guy re-elected, meaning Viktor Orban. What did you make of all that, and also all the online disinformation stuff?
Well, first of all, I think that this is really an election to watch, because this is the first election that takes place in an entirely post-truth world. And if any country is expected to go to the polls soon, I think it's very important to be aware of these tactics, these manipulations, where they try to incite fake sentiments, hate, or spread misinformation to distract from the real stake. But I also think that these are just very obvious examples of Orban feeling the loss of his power. he tries to grasp at everything he can because he feels that after 16 years he couldn't point out to his own winnings what he has delivered for the Hungarian people. So what's left for him is fake news, Russian disinformation, and imaginary enemies.
You're an independent MP, but I gather you didn't contest your seat this time round in this election. Why was that?
Well, I did not, indeed, and I am really hoping to see a change of trajectory in this country where the majority of Hungarians elect a more free and more pro-European government than what we had before.
So you didn't stand in order to give a better chance for that to happen?
Also that, and also I think that having worked 10 years in the Hungarian opposition, having worked on the rule of law conditionality, anti-corruption mechanism in the European Union, I think this was like a period for me to be proud of, and I am also looking forward to see the country changing in the future in a different capacity.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Katalin. Thank you so much. That was Katalin Cseh, former MEP and independent MP until tonight.
Yes, until tonight,
This is her last hours of being an MP in the Hungarian Parliament. But of course, we'll be watching partial results, Gavin. It's going to be a long night, but back to you for now in the studio in Paris.
Well, before you go, I assume Katalin can't hear me, but if it's a last question on the last night, I would like to know Katalin's take on Peter Magyar. When he's called pro-EU, we know he's said that if he does win tonight, and we are kind of boxing in the dark until we have an idea, the first thing he said he'll do is go to Brussels and try to bring back the money that's been withdrawn over rule of law issues with Hungary, 17, 18 billion euros. So the question to Katalin, whether she considers Peter Magyar, if he does win tonight, is he pro-EU? Is he an EU pragmatist? How would she describe him?
So, final question for you from our presenter, Katalin. I'm sorry because you can't hear him, but he's wondering, what do you think of Peter Magyar's European credentials? Do you think that certain things, obviously, that he sounds very pro-European on, but he also takes a hard line on asylum and migration, for example? How pro-European is he from your perspective?
Well, Peter Magyar was very clear that Hungary's place in the European Union, Hungary's place is in NATO, that Hungary should join the European Public Prosecutor's Office to cut down on corruption, and he wants to reinstate Hungary's respect and credibility among our allies. For me, that would be a very welcome change, and I'm really hoping forward to seeing that.
And you mentioned corruption. That's obviously a key word, because if that issue could be resolved, then in theory, these 18 billion euros in EU funds that were frozen for Hungary would be unlocked. That's sort of what happened in Poland, although, of course, the reforms haven't, gone very far. But that would be a big change if that were to be the case.
Of course, and if we just think about the fact that this is one of the poorest countries in the European Union, and the government refused billions of euros of European funding because that would have required anti-corruption reforms. This shows to the world what kind of government Viktor Orban had, and hopefully what kind of opportunities can a new government unlock if they take their anti-corruption promises seriously.
Right, well, I think that's it for now from Katalin Cseh and me, unless you want to keep us for a bit longer, Gavin. It's up to you.
Katalin, thank you. Thank you, and Armen as well, both of you.